Hi there. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at a little bit more about perfect competition. And in particular, we're going to try to answer the question, like, why is zero economic profit considered normal? And why do we call it normal economic profit? And really what we're doing here is adjusting back to long-run equilibrium. And so remember from a previous video that long-run equilibrium in perfect competition means that the firm is breaking even. And what we're going to do here is actually we're going to start with the firm earning a profit or a loss, and I'll explain why they return to this long-run equilibrium point as part of this video. So in the first part, we just kind of reviewed that in long run, firms earn zero economic profit, which we call normal. And we know that that's defined as producing the quantity where P equals ATC. But if there's, maybe increased demand, then there's going to be profit in the short run. And maybe if there's decreased demand, then there's going to be losses in the short run, which we looked at in a previous video. And we also talked about a firm shutting down if it gets so low, if the price gets really low. What we would find is that actually if the market is experiencing profits, economic profits, or the market's experiencing economic losses, that actually all by itself, the market will move back to equilibrium. And the mechanism by which that occurs is that if there's positive economic profit being earned, then other firms are going to open. They're going to, what we say is enter the market. It's a technical term of just saying like they open up. Because in perfect competition, there are no barriers to entry and exit, which is something we learned in the first video. So it's really easy to start up a company that sells this particular product. We would also say that if firms are earning losses, right, losing money, then the firm's going to shut down. And that would be like a permanent shutdown, and they exit the market. When those two things happen, when firms exit or when firms enter, and I see that's a little bit blurry, so we're going to hit that focus, see if that helps a little bit. Not much, but okay. What ends up happening is the supply curve shifts, because if you have profit, then we have more firms and then more supply, and that's actually going to cause the price to go back down again. So this is the part we're kind of talking about in that here. And as the price falls, as Mr. DARP falls, there's going to be less and less profit. And as there's less profit, there's going to be a continuing process of firms entering to get that little bit of profit that's left until finally they're at a break-even point and no more firms actually come back and enter. If there's losses, then there's going to be less supply as the firms shut down. And as there's less supply, the supply curve shifts to the left. There's actually going to be higher prices and then less losses. And so another firm will kind of exit the market, die off and go away, disappear. Love you, bye firm. And then higher prices result. And that will continue to happen until equilibrium is achieved. And so we're going to start in these kind of graphs showing what that process looks like. We're actually going to start in a loss, or we're going to start in a profit. And so on the AP micro exam, you might be asked to start in long-run equilibrium, where the firm is breaking even and moving out of that into profit or loss. But it's also just as likely you're asked actually to start in profit and move back to equilibrium, or to start in loss and move back to equilibrium. So the easy way to do this, if you're going to start in a loss, and that's the first one that we have here, we're going to put our market on the left and our firm on the right, just as usual. And the easy way to do this is to remember that the mechanism by which this is going to return, to equilibrium is that the supply curve is going to move. And the problem that these firms are facing if they're losing money is that the price is too low, that the Mr. DARP is going to be way down here. And so the way to kind of think about this is actually think about like maybe there's too many firms right now in this kind of short run environment. The market is producing QM1 and the price is P1, P sub 1. And then we attach that, we connect that over with a dashed line. And we have Mr. DARP, our old friend, and I'm just going to put Mr. D equals P. We know that that's the price that the firm is going to charge. And they have this marginal cost curve that's the same one as before. But we're going to actually start with this firm kind of in a loss, ATC. Right? And we know that they're going to produce where MR equals MC. So we'll say QF1 right there. And we know that their loss would be all the way up to here, right? I don't really necessarily want to shade that loss rectangle in right there because we're going to be moving a line around here in just a second. But if you can kind of visualize, it would end up being kind of this rectangle right here would be the loss for this firm, assuming that they're operating, right? If we have an AVC, maybe we would put that AVC way down here at the bottom. Now, this firm, right? This firm is going to be one of our survivors. They actually are randomly going to survive because one of the assumptions here is that all these firms have kind of identical cost structures, which It's obviously not true. What we would really expect is that the firms who have the highest costs, right, if maybe you have a higher cost of doing business, that actually you're going to go out of business first because you're suffering the largest losses. So the ones with the biggest losses leave first. And let's assume that maybe this is not one of those, or that all the firms are identical and that this is one of the random firms that survives. Now, as the firms are losing money, some firms exit. And when they exit, the supply curve is going to shift to the left. Now, that process of them kind of shifting this curve to the left incrementally, as that happens, see that doot-doot noise is really helpful for this. As that happens, the price will rise and the losses will get smaller and smaller as Mr. DARP starts to move upward on this side. And so these losses will get smaller and smaller until, and I'm going to kind of do this thing where I'm going to work backwards again, until they end up kind of re-equilibrating back up to where Mr. DARP would originally be. And I'm going to put 2 here actually, again, because I used 1 right there. So price 2. And the cause of that, again, I'm going to kind of work backwards, right? So this supply curve shifts way back, dashed line all the way over P2. And the quantity in the market actually goes down. Now, what happens is, like, as these firms are leaving, right, this price is rising and it's shrinking that profit or that loss, excuse me, and it's causing Mr. DARP to come up here. And eventually it's going to get to the point where this Mr. DARP hits that ATC and the price equals the ATC again, and the firm breaks even, at which point they're no longer going to be exiting the market. Now, the weird kind of thing that comes out of this, right? We can see in the market that we expect there to be less sales in the market and a higher price because there's fewer firms. But the remaining firm sees a higher price and they see more quantity. And that might be a little counterintuitive because you go, wait, we have fewer transactions here, but more transactions here. How does that compute? Just think about it like this. The size of the demand for the product is essentially is going to have less quantity demand, but for the remaining firms, they're going to get a bigger piece of the pie. And so each remaining firm is actually producing more units of output. And when we're here at QF2, we've returned to the point where P2 equals this ATC line, and we profit maximize at that point, and we're breaking even. And so it's kind of considered normal for them to earn zero economic profit because this is like their default state. They'll move back to this automatically through the forces of supply and demand. Now let's take a look at what that looks like from the profit side. We're going to basically repeat this process, but just kind of move the Mr. DARP the other direction. So we're going to start P and Q, P and Q. And we don't want to forget as we're doing these that we need to label the axes on both graphs, right? That's a really common mistake, is that people will forget to do the P and the Q on the firm. We don't want to forget that. Now, if we're told in our problem that firms are earning a profit and firms are going to enter, we know that market supply is going to rise and then move us back to normal profit. We actually kind of want to start with too little supply. It's a little easier to just draw it that way. And so we have this really high Mr. DARP way up here, Mr. DARP, and that's the price. We're going to say P sub 1, P sub 1. We'll throw a quantity marker here, QM sub 1. And our same old marginal cost curve, right? That's our firm's supply curve. And originally, this firm's going to be producing QF sub 1. And we'll say they're earning a profit. And I'm going to try to put this one like right there about in the middle, right? And the goal here is that we want this kind of ATC minimum. Remember, we want that to be crossed through where marginal cost is. And we kind of are just envisioning what this is going to look like at the end result. And so I'm kind of trying to think about, where is Mr. DARP going to end up? Well, I need it to end up like roughly in here. So I'm going to kind of put a little mark right there on my original demand curve. Now, these firms are earning a profit, and we could kind of think about how much is that profit. Well, it's that kind of little area right in there, right? So we can kind of visualize, if you want, to think about what that profit rectangle would look like. And as these firms are earning economic profit, other firms are going to enter. And that process will continue, and supply will continue to increase until, right, the price falls to the point where we get a Mr. DARP that crosses right through that ATC line again. And again, so at this point, when the firm is now producing at MR equals MC, QF sub 2, they're making fewer units. Now, here's your other kind of weird outcome. The market has more quantity of transactions, but this firm's making fewer units. It's for the exact same reason that we talked about with the firm above. This firm is actually going to sell fewer products because the market has more firms. Basically, this firm gets a smaller piece of that pie. So the price fell for both the market and the firm, and that Mr. DARP kind of incrementally fell, shrinking that profit rectangle as it went along until finally this firm is breaking even again at QF2 in this market. So hopefully this helped you understand a little bit about why we call zero economic profit normal and the adjustment back to long run equilibrium. I'll see you next time.